Hello to the group, John Stern in Holiday, Utah. I want to talk cameras because my Nikon V series videos, the V1 and the V3, are some of my most viewed videos on my channel, which is a bit of a mind blower. And I hope that Nikon is watching what kind of response these cameras are getting from the viewers in the YouTube world. And I want to talk about some things related to choosing vintage cameras that maybe you haven't really thought about very much. Because these are some of the things that I am going through in my own decision process to upgrade and get a new system. And the number one thing which separates today's cameras from cameras 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, because every camera out there can make a great exposure. They can. If you have your exposure right and your ISO, ASA settings correctly, any camera can do that, even on film, and I shoot film too. The number one thing that's separating today's technology from yesterday's technology is face detect. Face detect, face detect. And that's what I want. I want to be able to pull up the camera and take the image very quickly. And I can't do that. I can't do that with the V3. I can't do that with the V1. I can't do that with the NEX7 vintage from 2012. And I can't do that with the Nikon D3S. They don't have face detect. So full stop. If you're looking to buy a camera, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind when you're spending $200-300 on something used, when you can spend $600 or $700 on something new like the Nikon Z50. Okay, let's also talk about today's technology. These are 1-inch sensors. The 1-inch sensor has been great for me. I like the 1-inch sensor. And in 2012 and 2010, that was state of the art. Now everything is APS-C. So I shelved my V1 series and I bought into the NEX7 because it had 24 megapixels and was APS-C, bigger sensor. And it had some lenses too, but I stayed with the kit lens. Kit lens was just fine back then. So now I'm looking at the Nikon Z50, not the Z52, because I don't like the side flip out screen. I want a flip up screen. So as I'm using it like this, I can look at it and it's not flipping out and doing all weird things. So I'm looking at the Z50. But the Z50 doesn't have lenses. Makes me crazy. The number one lens that I want for the Z50 is the Sigma 18-50 f2.8 APS-C lens. But in Sigma's grandeur of thinking, they don't make it for the Z series. They don't make it for the Nikon Z series. Another point of craziness in my little world. So then I'm thinking about getting the adapter, which allows me to adapt. It's like a $250 thing. I can't, Megadap. I think Megadap makes it. $250 flange that you mount in between the lens and the body, and it allows you to use a Sony lens on a Nikon body. But I don't necessarily want to do that. So I'm stuck. I really am. I am really stuck. And I'm hoping that Sigma is going to do something with their lenses and come out with, you know, a Z series 18-50. Because it's I don't want to say it's the only, but I think it's the only mid-zoom 2.8 full constant aperture lens out there. So I haven't bought any cameras. I haven't bought anything because it all relates to, well, I don't want to say all relates, but it mostly relates to the lens, and then I want face detect. I want face detect in my camera. I've never had that before. I kind of have it on the phone, but that's a phone. But I want face detect on my camera so that I can have that face locked in and then shoot. Because I have all the other cameras without face detect. And how do you control the focusing with face detect? You stop down your aperture. So you shoot at f8, you don't shoot at f2, so that everything is in focus. And then you zone focus, right? So you understand where that zone is, and then you fire away. So these are some thoughts about the V1 series, correction, the V3 series and the V1 series, because I get 2 to 5 hours a week on those lens system videos and the camera videos and everything else. And it's a mind blower to me that there's still quite a lot of interest in the 1 series cameras when you can get a Z50. But you can't get the lenses because they don't make enough lenses for it. It just goes on and on and on. And then I thought about, well, maybe I'll get the updated Sony A6400 or A6600. I don't want to get the 6700 because it has that funky flip out screen. But I am not convinced of the Sony color science. I shot this for a few years, the NEX7, because it was small and compact and had a huge APS-C 24 megapixel sensor. But the colors were just, I want to say whack. But I would have to spend a lot of time to try to get the color science and the colors correct on the Sony series cameras. Or at least this one. And that made me crazy. So I shelved this and I went back to the V1. Because the great thing about Nikon's system is that their color science is just so good. You can even shoot in JPEG. Get your white balance correct and you're good to go. And you don't have to touch. You don't have to touch and edit those colors whatsoever. It just, and that's what it's all about. I don't shoot 500, 600 frames when I go out shooting. I maybe shoot 20 on a good day because I'm very selective about what I shoot. So I'm not at my computer trudging through all kinds of images and trying to color correct them and blah, blah, blah for the most part. But it sure is nice when you can shoot it, your white balance, make a half a stop exposure adjustment if needed, and then you're done. Add some sharpening, whatever. Correct some dust if you have any dust on the sensor or blobs or whatever, and then you're done. Full stop. You're done. So I miss that, which is why I can't remember the last time I shot the NEX. Maybe 3 years ago. Same way with the D3S. The Nikon D3S, the color science is great. It's got a 12 megapixel sensor, but in 2010, that was state of the art. And it's still really good. As long as you have good lenses. Here's the other quick tip of the day. You can buy any camera you want. Make sure your lenses are as best as you can afford. Better than the camera. Make sure your lenses are as best as you can afford. And no one is ever going to ask you what kind of camera you shot the image with, unless it's some kind of geeky camera guy like myself. When you're shooting, pro stuff or anything like that, it all relates to sharpness and the quality of the image after you're done. In some of the most iconic images, whether they're shot on the beaches of Normandy or the Hindenburg or whatever in history, are shot with stuff that people had on them and they went with it. And some of the images aren't very good. Contextually, they're very good. But quality-wise, some are blurry, some are, whatever. What's my point with that? Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you're shooting with. depending upon the subject and the content. But for the most part, make sure your lens is off the charts as best as possible, even if it's just one lens, even if it's a 51.4. So these are my thoughts on buying used cameras, older cameras. If you don't need face detect, these things are great. But if you need face detect or face recognition and whatever they're calling it now, you're going to have to get something new. You're going to have to get something new and future-proof your system. I don't think I'm going to go full frame. I'm going to stay with APS-C, the crop sensor, because lenses and the sensor size, that's a tough one. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but when you get a bigger sensor, the lenses get bigger, the body gets bigger, everything gets bigger. And as I move around and become more mobile, I'd rather have something smaller and just as capable. Just as capable. Okay, that's my, I don't know. Those are my thoughts on cameras and sensor sizes and lenses and old school V1, V3 series cameras, which, like I said before, still blows my mind that there's such an interest in this vintage stuff. There really is. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. I'm not an expert, but I play one on TV. I play one on YouTube. Just kidding. And maybe I can help. These are kind of keeping their value, anywhere from $200 to $400 for the body, and then the lenses are all over the place if you can find the lenses, because they're kind of slowly disappearing. The NEX series, even the NEX series, not even the A6400s and the A6100s and yada yada, are still at $100 to $200. I don't know if I'd buy one of these. I don't know if I'd buy one. And then the V1, I like the color science, not the color science, but I like the images from the V1 better than the V3. The V1 just looks more film-like. It just looks like more inviting, more better than the V3. But the V3 has a faster frame rate, faster focusing, and all kinds of stuff, so it's almost negligible. And it has a bigger sensor too. I think this is like 18 megawatts, and this is 10 megawatts. Megapixels, of course. Okay, I hope this was helpful. I don't know. You tell me. Glad to share, though. Always glad to share my experiences, because if this can save you some money and some effort in trying to decide, if this gives you a bright light moment, then that's great. Then, you know, I've helped by talking to myself. If not, then keep on your quest and try to figure it out, and then go from there, and then live and learn. Okay. Cheers.